Hey everybody, it's Megan Shove, the Transparent Realtor. Today we're going to talk about the concept of caveat emptor and what that means for home repairs if you're a seller. I'm going to work on a second video where we talk about caveat emptor and repair negotiations if you're a buyer. But today we're going to talk about sellers. In a caveat emptor state, homes are sold as is, meaning sellers are not contractually obligated to do any repairs. Now, that doesn't mean buyers can't ask for repairs. Buyers still have contractual rights to do any and all inspections during their due diligence period, of course, with reasonable notice to the sellers. Those inspection reports can be used to create what's called a due diligence repair agreement, or DDRA for short. When it comes to those inspections, I always recommend my buyers to hire the right technician for each use. So generally a home inspection for the general home inspection, a septic if there's a septic system, HVAC inspection if there is an aged HVAC, or if there's any reason to think that there are problems with the HVAC. If the home inspector finds any issues with any of the major systems like plumbing, electrical, etc., then I recommend getting a secondary inspection based on those things. And then if there's any structural concerns, contacting a general contractor to address any structural concerns. That way, when buyers approach sellers, they're going to have the expert documentation to justify their concern. For my sellers, I usually recommend we hold off on agreeing to any repairs until after the appraisal has been received and to see if the appraiser has called out any repairs for the home. So what do I mean by that is, depending on the loan type for the buyer, there may be repairs that are required over other loans. So for example, for a conventional loan, there are usually very few, if any, repairs that are required to allow the lender to proceed with a conventional loan. Now, if you're using a government-backed loan, like a VA loan or an FHA loan, for example, there is usually a higher level of standard that comes along with lending on a home, right? So we can't see peeling paint on the exterior or interior of the home. There can't be any wood rot in the home. There can't be any deck boards that are rotted or missing, or anything that would cause the house to be unsafe or unsanitary for the buyer. So for that reason, we don't know when you're getting an appraisal. Usually I have a good idea of what the appraiser is going to call out, if anything, but sometimes they surprise us. So I usually like to make sure that my sellers are fully equipped with what they think that they want to agree on for repairs. But I don't usually recommend that they put anything in writing until after we've received the appraisal, because we want to make sure it comes in at least at value. And I also want to make sure that we have room in your budget to address any appraisal required repairs, something that is necessary for the loan to close, right? So in my opinion, that gets a higher priority with repairs than any of the other requested repairs from a buyer. So you want to make sure the house comes in at value and there are no or very little appraisal required repairs before you agree on requested repairs by the buyer. Because I'll give an instance, right? Say you and a buyer as a seller go under contract on a home. The home is listed and under contract for $300,000. And the buyer comes through and they want $3,000 worth of repairs. So easy math tells us we go down $3,000, so $297 now is what we're looking at netting. That's obviously not including like expenses, right? We're just doing easy math here. So now say the home comes in at $290 and they need $1,000 in repairs, right? So instead of it being $297 as a net, now you're looking at $289 as a net. And had you agreed on that $3,000 in repairs before knowing that appraisal comes in low, then now you could be out down another $3,000, which would take us down to $286. Okay. So $297 versus $286 is a big difference depending on what you're going to do with the proceeds afterwards, right? Regardless, that's a big difference, okay? So that's why I usually recommend my sellers wait until after we've received the appraisal and any potential appraisal required repairs before you agree on doing any repairs, getting that in writing, okay? And here's another key point. While, yes, you can sell your house as is, and you do not need to do any repairs to sell your house. But once a buyer discloses any defects found by any of the inspectors, I, as the listing agent, now have to legally disclose those to any future buyers. So what does that mean for that current buyer that you have under contract? Is that kind of gives them leverage to agree on repairs. Now, I'm not saying you have to bend the knee and do any repairs that they want, but we should heavily consider what they're asking and negotiate accordingly, because we don't know what that next buyer is going to ask for the next time around. Now, again, if they're asking for some outlandish stuff, upgrades to the house, brand new systems when there's a minor repair that's required, then we can have that conversation. But it is in your best interest to try to come to a agreed upon repair situation for you and that buyer, if it makes financial sense for you. So again, if we do come down to repairs, I have to legally disclose any of those. So for my sellers, after those inspections are completed by the buyers usually send over that DDRA, like I mentioned, and then we employ and get estimates from our trusted vendors associated with each one of those repairs. An electrician for electrical issues, plumbing for any plumbing issues, a general contractor for any structural issues, and then a handyman for any cosmetic touch-ups. And then once we get those, then we kind of have an idea of how much those repairs are going to cost you. And we have that on hold until you get that appraisal and those appraisal required repairs in hand. And then depending on where that net comes down to and what that is going to cost you out of pocket, then we can redline and negotiate those requested repairs. Okay, so that's kind of how repairs work for sellers. Once the repairs have been negotiated and then we discover what the appraisal has come in at, then obviously moving forward and repairing accordingly, and then it's really smooth sailing after that. So to sum it up, North Carolina is a buyer beware state. Sellers, you are not required to make any repairs, but buyers can ask. Using the right technicians for every issue is important. Wait for the appraisal before agreeing on anything major, and always disclose repairs honestly. Real estate is all about being proactive and transparent, and a good agent will help you navigate every step of the way. So again, this is Megan Schoaf, the Transparent Realtor. If you think any of my content is relevant to you, or you think anybody else would find it interesting, please share, like, and subscribe my content. Until next time, guys, have a good one.